Welcome to the SCA Specialty Coffee Association online training. The SCA represents a global community of coffee enthusiasts and professionals who are devoted to continuous learning and always improving the practices of our industry. It is my goal through the resources found at www.sca.training that I can share with as many people as possible the great coffee training provided by the SCA, alongside preparatory lessons for all SCA certifications. These certified modules include Introduction to Coffee, Green Coffee, Roasting, Sensory Analysis, Coffee Brewing, and Barista Skills. My name is Adam, but I also go by the Chinese name Huang Peng, depending on which side of the globe you find me. Since 2015, I have been an AST, that's an authorized SCA trainer, and part of my teaching involved immersion into Mandarin Chinese as I took the bulk of my courses and examinations in a second language. I realized that not everyone listening is a native English speaker, but that's okay. Coffee is a great medium to provide engaging content for anyone who wishes to improve their English language and learn more about coffee. With the slides, videos, recordings, PDF transcripts, and more provided on our website, www.sca.training, coffee and English learners can double their learning. As we go through our mini lessons, we'll cover 3 levels of content: foundation, intermediate, and professional. Aside from the introduction course, the other 5 modules are offered at 3 levels for a combined 16 possible certifications. If you enjoy the content, please be sure to tell your friends and help them move forward in their specialty coffee training. Share the links or the website, as the content for now is free. Let's get started with the general details for our course today, as provided by the SCA Specialty Coffee Association. I should also add, if you haven't already tuned into Brewing Curriculum Introductions, the audio content, I encourage you to do so, either before or after you finish this lesson. The purpose of this module is to ensure a foundational level of knowledge by introducing core brewing skills and equipment to people with no previous brewing experience. Successful candidates should be able to use a grinder and brew equipment skillfully, producing correct recipes and great tasting coffees according to core SCA standards. Though this course can be completed in 7 hours, I have found through experience that students investing 1 full day learning, practicing, and performing brewing and extraction skills have a much better classroom experience and testing result. It is recommended, but not required, by the SCA that this course be attempted by those coffee students who have already passed the Introduction to Coffee training module. I'll read from the slide our written theory and practical skills content required for assessments. For the written content, you'll be expected to understand basic coffee introductions, the 6 brewed coffee essentials, our brew formula, water temperature and water quality, grind size for coffee, extraction, brewing equipment, the brewing process, and a basic summary of the brewing course. For your practical assessment, you should be able to demonstrate filter brewing using 1 brewing method with a final drink assessment. You and your course instructor will critique the drink. And then second, you should use another brewing vessel, a different brewing device. So you might do a filter brew first and an immersion brew second, and then you should also assess that drink alongside your instructor. Afterward, a written assessment will include 45 minutes to complete 15 points and 15 questions. Alright, so let's really dig into today's lesson, Brewing Foundations. With brewing skills, amazing coffee really comes from amazing hands, and my hope for all of you is that you can learn the expression and commit it to heart, that the great goal is to make every bean shine. Why would we say that? You know, every coffee is different, and it's your job as a barista, as a coffee brewer, to bring out the best in those coffees. We'll explore what it means in further detail, but essentially be encouraged. You don't need to go out and buy the most exotic and most expensive coffees on the market to provide people with amazing coffee experiences, or even to enjoy the best coffee yourself. You just need to nail down the art of perfect extraction. First, let's talk about some of the things you should differentiate, specifically between Arabica and Robusta. You should be able to describe the basic flavor characteristics of our two main coffee species, Arabica and Robusta. If you're interested to learn more here, I encourage you to check out the lessons on green coffee. However, in general, we can make these comparisons listed above. Arabica coffees on the left will typically be grown at higher elevations. They'll have a higher perceived acidity. Their shape will be oblong or oval, ovular. Distinctly citrus flavors, depending on the process, should be evident. More floral aromas. They will have a lower caffeine content than their Robusta counterpart. Generally, the coloration should be a green-blue, again process dependent, and there will be more of a curved center line, the cut that divides the bean. Whereas, if you look on the right-hand side, those Robusta coffees are typically grown at lower elevations. They also have lower perceived acidity levels. They're more round-shaped generally. They'll display earthy flavors, again process dependent, but generally more close to the earth. Pungent aromas that correlates closely with earthy flavors. They also have a higher caffeine content, which increases the bitter perception. They have a higher perceived body, which in some cases, particularly espresso blending, is very important. And the coffee, even before roasting, will have a more brown or yellowish coloration. And there's more of a straight center line with a flatter face. If you were to lay the coffee bean down on a table, the Arabica might be more curved, not lay flat on the table, whereas Robusta would. Now, question. Have you ever brewed or drank Robusta coffee? Many people would answer no. But if you can answer yes, can you explain some of those aromas and flavors, the body that you experienced? Some of the things noted above. Often people will say kind of tobacco or mushroom, rubber, earth, these very dense, earthy, pungent aromas and flavors, right? Very heavy coffee, very heavy mouthfeel. But if not, I encourage you to go ahead and find some. Maybe at your local roastery, you could order some, or you could discuss with them whether they might be able to get some in stock. It's a great learning experience, and there's basically a whole new world waiting to be explored in Robusta coffee. Next, we're going to talk about coffee bean storage and some particular advice which is helpful just to preserve the goodness of your coffee. Okay, so this slide also appears in our barista training content because it's essential that baristas understand how to handle and preserve our coffees, whether it's espresso, single origin, or otherwise. Oxygen. Oxygen exposure increases oxidation for roasted coffees. This would lead to staleness and a loss of aromas, even affecting flavor and body. Grind. So of course, always grinding fresher is better. You want to keep beans whole as long as possible and until use. Why is that correlated? Of course, when you grind the coffee, then more oxygen can be exposed to the grounds, to the inside of the coffee bean. Temperature. Cooler temperatures are generally better. Hot temperatures increase oxidation. While some people think, and there's kind of an urban legend out there, that freezing coffee or refrigerating coffee is a good way to go, we're going to talk about moisture and what happens when you go from cold to warm, cold to hot. You can actually increase moisture content, and so you want to avoid that. But cool, steady temperatures is always the recommendation for storing your coffee beans. Sunlight. UVA sunlight is powerful, and it penetrates through glass and plastic containers. Although many people might use these to store their coffee beans because they look nice, put them up on the shelf or in your home. In fact, UVA light is reactive, and it causes those aromas again, or delicate flavors of the coffee to deteriorate. Moisture, always drier is better. Once the coffee is roasted, you want to keep it dry and cool, generally in a dark and stable environment. So moisture and water, what they do is they can actually start to initiate extraction. They also kind of speed up the environmental variables. You know, personally, if you're in a warm, humid climate, it might actually be more difficult on your body than if you're in a hot, dry climate. And that's because moisture has a big effect on the activity levels of temperature and oxygen, other variables. Cleanliness. Cleaner is always better. That's just a rule with any food service, beverage service, and coffee oils particularly can become rancid. And when coffee oils become rancid, they have a strong flavor, they become bitter, and we really need to avoid that, not just in our coffee beans, which is evident with darker roasted coffees, but also with our coffee equipment. And then consistency. You know, once we calibrate something, once we establish a good rule and we find there's just a really good way to brew this coffee or to use this brewing device, you want to lock that in as a habit. Okay, so repeat that. Consistency is really important when you're using your coffee beans, and then also when you're brewing and using your equipment. All right, one of the things you need to be able to show on your practical exam and written exam is a knowledge of the different tools and their effect on our brewing of coffee. All right, so we might ask you, for example, can you name 6 or 7 or 8 different brewing methods? Okay, brewing tools, brewing methods, and so we'll just kind of go from, let's go counterclockwise. We can start up at the mocha pot. Okay, so a mocha pot up here on the top right, you'll notice it's got a cylinder on the bottom and a cylinder on the top. So what happens is you boil the water down below, and that boiled water forces steam in evaporation up through a coffee filter bed, which is pressed through a metal screen and percolated into the top chamber. Okay, so some people might call this an Italian pressed or an Italian mocha pot, but in a mocha pot combines both pressure and vacuum in terms of brewing. And then we're going to move to the next one there, which is AeroPress. You'll see the word on the bottom left, but the AeroPress also is a type of hybrid brewer, which combines vacuum and immersion brewing. And so the coffee is steeping in water, and then once inverted, we use a piston and we press it through a filter, whether paper or metal, into the final vessel. We have an espresso machine, which of course uses a lot of pressure and finely ground coffee to press into a concentrated beverage. Filter coffee. Okay, so this is a drip filtration method, filtering through albeit plastic, paper, metal, screen. All of those have a different variety. And filter, sometimes we think of flat bottom filter coffee, whereas the V60 drip has a very V-shaped 60-degree angle for the filter drip method. Right next to that is a Vietnamese coffee that also uses gravity just to pull the coffee grounds through a metal filter down into the cup. Chemex, another type of filtration with metal and paper filters used. Cold brew coffee. Cold brew coffee uses a very slow dripping process as well. And what do we have? Cafetiere, or a French press. Okay, so this is an immersion with a filter pressed through it, a metal filter pressed through it. Next we have toddy. Toddy will use a cold drip, slower immersion process, allowing the coffee to drip through slowly. Vietnamese, we already did that. That was over here in the gravity. And then Ceviche Ibrik, or Turkish coffee. And that's just, you know, kind of like a cowboy coffee. Some might say you boil the coffee right into the hot water. So again, that's immersion. So we're looking at hybrids, vacuums. We didn't talk too much about the vacuums, but siphon would be a vacuum. And filter coffee and immersion.